In this lecture, we are going to discuss interfaces in C#. An interface contains definitions for a group of related functionalities that a class or struct can implement. By using interfaces, you can, for example, include behavior for multiple sources in a class. This capability is important in C# because the language doesn't support multiple inheritance of classes. In addition, you must use an interface if you want to simulate inheritance to structs, because they can't actually inherit from another struct. So let's go ahead and let's build an interface. And inside of the same class file, we're going to declare our interface, and then we're going to inherit from that interface and build from it in a separate class file. So let's go ahead and build a class file that implements an interface. So I'm going to go over here to my models folder. I'm going to right click. I'm going to click add, new item. And I can go in here and just create an interface to associate right there. So I'm going to click interface. And I'm just going to name it interface. And right now it's implementing an interface in the namespace courseproject.models. So let's go in here and let's have this set to public. And then inside of public interface, we're just going to implement a method here that says string get first method. Remember about interfaces that there is no logic running through it. It helps build the architecture and the behavior for multiple source classes. So once you implement an interface and you define the different methods associated on that interface, you can inherit that behavior into another class and associate the actual logic inside of your class file by inheriting from the interface. So right here, I put a method that says string get first method. So I'm going to put another method here. And it's going to be int post second method. So once we have that, this interface is just going to have these two methods to associate with it. Then what we're going to do is we're going to come down here and we're going to create a class. Now typically you will separate your interfaces from your class files, but in this case I'm just going to add it to this. So let's go public class. And let's put my interface, and then it's going to inherit with this symbol right here from interface. And this is how we implement our custom class file that inherits from interface. So let's do that, and let's do opening and closing. And as you can see right here, it's saying interface does not implement a get first method and a post second method. So now it's telling us that we need to implement both of these methods with logic. So let's go in here and let's do private. We're going to create a basic variable here, string my first variable. We're going to have that one there. We're going to implement private int my second variable. So now that we have our two variables declared, what we can do now is create two methods that associate with our interface up here. So let's go over here and let's do public string get first method, and we'll go here, and then we're going to open and close that, and then we're going to come down here, we're going to do public int post second method, so that we are initiating and implementing the different methods on our interface. So we have all of those. Now we're still getting an error because it needs to return a value path. It needs to return a string. So we can come in here and we can just easily return my first variable. And then what we can do on the second one is implement return my second variable. And typically what you'll do in this case, you're not receiving any more errors because we have implemented the two methods associated with our interface. But typically what you'll do is you'll set a constructor, and let's say right here, public my interface. And let's say right here, you want to initiate the values associated with my first variable. So let's say my first variable equals my text. You want to set the second variable equal to an integer. So let's make this 25. So now what you've done, you've passed hard-coded values to associate in your constructor. We've set two hard-coded values in our constructor for my first variable equal to my test and for my second variable equal to 25. And now you can't change these hard-coded variables because these variables, they're associated with the keyword private, meaning that outside of this class, these values cannot change. So in this case, we've just hard-coded some values. Typically, you will not do this. But we've set my first variable equal to my text and my second variable equal to 25. And then when we actually create an object instance of this class and call these methods, we are going to return my first variable and my second variable. So then what we'll do is we'll go to our C# controller, and then we'll go right down here, third class. We're going to say my interface, my object, equals new my interface. Notice that we did not actually implement the interface. Remember, the interface does not have any logic associated with it. So this is the key to this. And I'm getting an error because I have my object already initiated right there. So what's happening here is I'm not actually implementing the interface when I call an object instance of this class. Interfaces do not have any actual logic running through it. It's just for architecture reasons. But you can associate an interface and then allow your class to inherit from the interface and reuse some of those behaviors associated with that interface. So we have my interface, my objects3 equals new interface. And then what we'll do is we'll come down here and we'll say my object3 dot get first method. And then we'll say my object3 post second method. And then what's going to return from these values, as we stated before, is what? This is going to be my text, and this is going to be 25. And that's associated with the values on this class, my interface, and the values associated inside of the constructor. So that's what's being passed. And then when we call these methods, this is what's going to be returned whenever we pass that back to our view, whatever values we want to associate in that constructor to pass to these methods. Now in future lectures, when we actually go into MVC and dependency injection with our startup.cs file, we can add and configure our own custom classes and utilize dependency injection to put inside of the configure services and then utilize it in the configure method. I want to thank you for joining me in this lecture.